Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Now, I submitted my. Have we got slides coming up? Work. Just there we go. Look at that, perfect. I submitted this and then read Jeff's email saying only 4 slides, so he didn't veto me. So if I only get 4 slides, I'll be very fast. But so. Tim Buckley, I run a very small Australian public interest think tank. I'll put that on as a disclaimer. We have no government funding, no corporate funding, no finance funding. I actually do work in what I consider to be the national interest. It's all about driving finance at speed and scale to deliver on the energy transformation. So I come from finance for my sins. For 17 years, I was head of research in Australia at Citigroup, at the time the biggest bank in the world. I got fired for saying we were headed straight towards a cliff. It was the best career move of my life. We went off the cliff after I got off. So I was just going to talk about the energy, geopolitical energy landscape. I think I modified the topic a little bit. I'll just talk about what I always want to talk about, answer the question you want to be asked. But I will try and stick somewhat to the topic and the time limit. But the US is under Trump. Who knows what he's going to do? It's Trump. He'll do whatever he thinks on the day, but they're largely going to go isolationist. Now, at the end of the day, we could say that's a global climate disaster, or we could just be realistic and say it doesn't matter. We live in the Asian century. Australia exports to Asia, and our number one trade partner is China. Now, it does matter to Australia. Like, he's going to hit every ally as well as every enemy, or who the fuck knows, excuse me, who knows what he's going to do. But when he starts by saying, I'm going to attack Mexico and Canada, you go, what about the North American Free Trade Agreement? Okay, who knows what he's going to do. But there is a massive ongoing deindustrialisation of Western economies. Now, I'd remind you of that because it's been ongoing for our economy for about 50 years. It was actually a core part of American strategy to outsource everything to China. And now they're worried that China dominates the world in all the manufacturing, so trying to reverse it. I think we do have to reverse it. We do have to have supply chain diversity for geopolitical reasons, but let's leave it to the Americans and the Europeans. I don't think Australia is going to diversify too rapidly away from China, but it's ongoing. This literally from last week. ThyssenKrupp, biggest steel company in Germany, despite getting tens of billions of dollars of subsidies, sacking. The small print, obviously the headline's big, but 5,000 workers likely to lose their jobs. They're closing 2 blast furnaces. But certainly the deindustrialisation of Germany and Europe is accelerating, and it's all because they can't compete with China. But it's also they can't compete with Chinese technology, scale and ambition. It's not because China's dumping. China gets better margins offshore than they do in their own very competitive domestic markets. But trying to compete with China is a mug's game. You will lose. So a lot of what I say in terms of when I'm talking to the federal government is let's partner with them. They're our number one trade partner. There's daylight 2, 3 and 4. So let's partner with our number one partner. 30% of Australian exports go to China. We're not going to beat them in any race. So we might as well try and partner with them. But a reminder that just because we live in Australia and we get barraged with Murdoch media, I'll keep the language clean, we've got to remember it's not the real state of affairs. And so there's a lot of half-truths at best. But I was just reading this. I mean, 5 years, I've studied India for the last 10 years, and India did go very anti-China for a while. It was interesting, just happened to stumble on this last week. China is India's number one trade partner again. So Modi went closer to America, but at the end of the day, Modi will do what's in India's national interest, and India is now back working a lot closer with China. And that sort of threw me a little bit because when I was covering India full time, India was very anti-China, and it was all about trying to build national spirit within India. It was a very, very American sort of strategy, have a common enemy and therefore build India. But I was looking at the wind industry, and China now dominates the Indian wind industry. And so certainly when we talk about the redefining of geopolitical landscapes, when I Now that Trump's in America, I'm just going to look north, but I also add west. I'm going to look west because that's where India is and that's where Europe is. So climate ambition, if anything, I think will go faster. That's my positive view. I've got to stay positive. But I think China will likely ally with Europe and they'll both have a race to the top and just let America stagnate and isolate. But this slide from the IEA, and again, the idea that we could ever catch China, or America could catch China, or anyone could catch China. Red is obviously China. This is the IEA data. It's just saying across 6 different sectors, China has been putting in the vast majority of all new manufacturing capacity. So that's annual incremental manufacturing capacity. We know China dominates the world in all zero emissions industries of the future, with the exception of steel at the moment, but they're also accelerating their momentum. So their market share is going up. It's 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%, and they're still investing, and that's not going to change. So again, Australia, we're an export nation. Our number one partner is China. We should partner with them and collaborate with them. And if they do that, they're likely to invest here if we welcome them. So we've got to be explicit. We actually do want them to invest in partnership with Australia. I will put the caveat, it's got to be majority Australian owned, my caveat. But at the end of the day, I think China's very happy to do that because they want to work with their key suppliers. And if they can't work with their key suppliers, they will go elsewhere. That's a massive strategic threat for our country. We dominate the iron ore industry supplied to China, and if China's not comfortable with us, they will go elsewhere. Guinea is a $23 billion investment by China this year to diversify away from over-reliance on Australia. And when China diversifies away from us, we will feel it. Nickel is only a shot across the bow. On moving fast, the renewable energy, we always have this, in my sphere, working on decarbonisation, I work with people like Professor Ross Garnaut and Rod Sims, and Ross Garnaut's been telling us we could be a renewable energy superpower. We are dreaming. I still believe we can be. We are nowhere near that. What China does in a week, we do in a year. We do 6 gigawatts of wind and solar, distributed and utility every year, 6 gigs. China does 22 gigawatts a month. Last month, 28 gigawatts. The average for the last 20 months has been 22 gigawatts. That is up 100% on what they were doing 2 years ago. So hence why I say it's only up 22% this year. Last year was up 100%, this year's up another 22%. So when China does things, they do it at massive scale. It's just unbelievable, and I find it inspiring. It's what gives me hope that we can actually solve the energy transformation globally, because China and its technology, its manufacturing scale, its exports, and its domestic installs. So this is a chart, and it's a reworking of what, be very careful when you take fossil fuel industry data. So take the BP stats. If you look at energy in, renewables don't really count. If you look at energy out, you get a very different picture of the world, because when you burn coal, 2/3 of the coal is waste energy. So this is electrification as a percent of total energy in a particular country. China's gone from being an absolute world laggard, they've overtaken the West and then gone 50% higher in the space of 25 years. The IEA is now caught on. The IEA has been long and wrong on renewables for the last 15 years. They're still too conservative, but they're catching up. But what they're highlighting here, or what we're highlighting here, but the IEA is saying it as well, is that China is electrifying everything progressively. Industry, think about transport. Why would China embrace EVs? Because it reduces their imported oil dependence. It also allows them to dominate the industry of the future, transport, and they can dominate the technology, but it's about reducing energy security risks. Transferring to domestic energy, so people go, oh, but they're still building coal-fired power plants. Yeah, it's a lot easier to decarbonise electricity, but it's not so much about the number one goal being decarbonisation. It's about industry dominance, investment, employment, exports, technology, energy security, clean air, and then maybe decarbonisation is sort of the number 6, 7, 8, 9th goal but all of the goals actually align with a livable planet. And anyone who suggests China is still playing catch up, we're dreaming. They've just launched a 15 megawatt turbine for onshore. The average Western player is at 6 to 8 megawatts. Offshore, they've gone, GE announced a 15 megawatt offshore wind turbine. China immediately came out the next day with an 18 megawatt one, then a 20 megawatt one, then a 26 megawatt, then a dual one, which is 36 megawatts. GE hasn't even launched their 15 megawatt at scale yet, and China's gone way past it. So the idea that they're stealing Western technology might have been right a decade ago. Like industrial espionage, everyone does it. There's no point in them stealing Western technology. They want to go forward. They lead the world. They're already ahead of us by a country mile. So when I talk about partnering with China, part of it is because we can't ever get to their technology unless they share it with us. Their robotics, their automation, it's unbelievable. I'm probably at time, am I? You're going to give me a wind up? A fourth leg of the story that I might be ahead of the curve here. We put out a major report. All of our research is available, public interest, free of charge on our website. But China dominates the world in manufacturing all of these clean tech industries. They dominate the world in installation of it. They dominate the world in exporting it. Last year, China overtook Japan to be the #1 auto exporter in the world. But a fourth leg of it is China going global. Now, the BRI a decade ago, the Belt Road Initiative, was very ham-fisted, very one-sided, a bit of a debt trap, putting it politely. The new version of the Belt Road Initiative is called Small and Beautiful. There's nothing overly small about it. It's small compared to China, but everything's big in China. But what they're doing is exporting technology and manufacturing capacity into other countries. So building EV factories in Uzbekistan, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Peru, in Chile, in Brazil, in Hungary, in Turkey, in Morocco, everywhere. Building battery factories, building wind turbine factories. So Goldwind just launched 3 months ago, the first offshore wind turbine factory in Brazil. Bittersweet justice, they took over a GE facility, modernised it, and are now selling Brazilian-made turbines using Chinese technology, but using Brazilian workers. The BRI was all about Chinese workers. This version is all about upskilling domestic workers. It's a win-win-win. It's a win for the country, it's a win for China, and it's a win for the planet. So we identified over $120 billion of foreign direct investment by China around the world in the last 18 months. That's, to me, the fourth leg of it. So I'll finish, actually. Just green iron, it's been something I've been working on for the last year. Australia, #1 exporter of iron ore in the world. Australia, #1 exporter of coking coal in the world. We don't muck around, we're #1 in the world. We're half the world's iron ore, half the world's coking coal. So this crap about Australia being small and irrelevant that some politicians talk about ignores the fact in trade we play right up there. That is a massive risk and a massive opportunity. If we have a technology problem. Our iron ore quality is low iron, high impurity. If we don't do any value adding, we will progressively lose massive share. And so what we've identified is if Australia were to value add our iron ore and export iron, either HBI, hot briquetted iron, or green iron, where it's powered by renewables and green hydrogen, we have a potential billion tonne per year decarbonisation opportunity in the Asian region. I'll say it again, 1 billion tonnes a year decarbonisation opportunity. Our domestic emissions are 420, 440 million tonnes a year. So this is more than double our domestic in one commodity, one opportunity. It's massive. We won't get all of it. China won't let us dominate it, but we need to partner with our customers. We need to partner with Japan, Korea and China, co-invest and drive 1 billion tonne per annum, and it would mean we could double the value of our iron ore exports every year and help drive decarbonisation. So we've got to think about decarbonisation as the single biggest investment, employment and export opportunity our country's ever seen. Thank you.